It began on a night when the fog rolled in from the marshes, slow and deliberate, like a living thing that had forgotten how to die. I was walking alone, a lantern swinging at my side, when I first saw the silhouette of the house. It stood apart from the world, black roof crooked against the moon, its windows dull as blind eyes. There was no path leading to it, only grass flattened by wind and the faint scent of salt and rot drifting in the air. I had not meant to find it, yet something called. When I drew closer, I noticed the air grew thicker, as though the night itself were holding its breath. The insects had gone silent. Even my footsteps felt muffled, swallowed by something unseen. Then came the first whisper, a sound that wasn't quite sound. It brushed the inside of my skull, delicate as silk, cold as stone. It said only this: "Not yet. Wait until the hour turns." I froze, lantern trembling in my hand. The voice was not of the living, yet it knew I was there. And beneath its words, I thought I heard another presence, a deeper silence that listened, as if curious, as if hungry. That was the moment I understood. This was no ordinary house. It was waiting for something. Something, or someone, to make it speak. That I stood before the door, its surface warped and slick with age. The wood seemed to pulse faintly under the lantern light, expanding and contracting as though it drew shallow breaths. I reached out, hesitant, yet compelled, and the cold that met my fingers felt alive, like skin without warmth. There was no handle, only a keyhole shaped oddly, like an open mouth frozen midward. I knelt, peering through it. Darkness met me there, dense, layered, and moving. I thought I saw a flicker, like a reflection from water deep below. Then, something moved on the other side. A soft scraping, rhythmic and wet. My pulse matched its pace. I wanted to run, but the silence outside had grown heavy, pressing me toward the threshold. It was not the silence of emptiness, it was expectation. And in that expectant hush, I felt it. The silence knew my name. I whispered it once, to test the air. Immediately, the door exhaled. A slow, decaying breath that smelled of damp wood, candle wax, and something sweetly metallic, blood, perhaps, long dried into the grain. The latch shifted by itself, the sound of rust flaking away like old scabs. The door opened inward. From the darkness within came a whisper, not words, but the tone of welcome or warning. I couldn't tell which. The lantern's flame flickered low, and I crossed the threshold, the boards sighing beneath me as though relieved. That was when I heard it again. A voice from somewhere deep in the house, soft and trembling, speaking just above the silence. "You came early." The air inside was thick, as if the house had not breathed for years and was only now remembering how. Dust hung like fog, shimmering faintly in the glow of my lantern. The walls were lined with portraits, faces painted in the dim, brown tones of another century. Their eyes followed me, not with malice, but with recognition. A long hallway stretched before me, narrowing with every step. I could hear faint ticking, not steady, but uneven, as though time itself were limping through the house. I followed the sound until it led me to a small parlor, and there it stood, a great clock taller than a man, carved from black walnut, the glass over its face cracked like ice. But it had no hands. The ticking came from within, a desperate flutter, like wings trapped in a jar. I leaned closer, and the sound stopped. The air grew still, and for a moment I could hear the faint crackle of the lantern's flame. Then, from behind the clock's casing, came a whisper. "Don't let it know you can hear it." I stumbled back, the voice faint but unmistakable, my own. The silence that followed was so complete it felt alive again, pressing against my ears until I thought I might scream. And then, beneath that silence, came a slow creak from upstairs, a door opening on its own. Someone, or something, had heard me arrive. And though I could not see it yet, I knew that the house's true voice would come only after midnight. The stairway loomed ahead, narrow, steep, and half swallowed by shadow. Each step groaned beneath my boots, releasing the scent of dust and something older, like paper left too long beneath damp stone. At the top, a long corridor stretched into blackness. Faint moonlight leaked through a cracked window, illuminating a pattern on the floor, bare footprints, small and wet, leading away from me. They stopped in front of a door slightly ajar, from which drifted a low hum, soft as a lullaby sung through teeth. I called out, my voice barely more than a whisper. No answer. I pushed the door open. The room inside was strange. Everything covered in white sheets that seemed to move, subtly, as if breathing. My lantern cast long, quivering shadows over furniture that had forgotten its shape. In the center stood a child's bed, the coverlet smooth and freshly made, though the rest of the room was thick with age. On the pillow lay a music box, its handle turning on its own. The melody it played was broken, skipping certain notes as if something inside had cracked. I stepped closer, and the tune faltered, then reversed, playing backward. That was when the whispering began again, not from the box this time, but from beneath the bed. I knelt slowly, lowering the lantern. The light reached only darkness, until two pale fingers slid into view, clutching the floorboards. A voice drifted up from below, trembling but deliberate. "It's almost midnight. Don't answer when the house calls." Then, the fingers withdrew, and the floorboards sealed themselves, as though they had never moved. The music box wound down. The silence returned, and it felt satisfied that I backed away from the bed, my pulse echoing the slow tick that had returned somewhere deep in the house. The air felt heavier now, moist, as though the walls themselves had begun to breathe again. My lantern sputtered, casting a sickly light that quivered over the portraits lining the upper hall. I hadn't noticed them before. 6 of them, perhaps more, hung in uneven rows along the corridor. Each depicted a member of the same family, men in dark coats, women in lace, children with hollow gazes. Their eyes were all painted with the same dull, amber tint, except for one. The smallest portrait, hanging near the end of the hallway, had real eyes. I didn't see it at first. Only when I passed did the shift catch the corner of my vision. A flicker, a glimmer. I turned back. The child in the painting now stared directly at me. His pupils dilated, the skin around them tightening as if the face behind the canvas were pressing outward. I whispered, "Who are you?" The boy's mouth twitched. The crackled paint around his lips began to split. Then, faintly, I heard his voice, muffled as though he spoke from behind a wall. I was the first to listen. A drop of something, thick, dark, slid down the frame, landing on the floorboards with a sound like a heartbeat. Behind me, the grandfather clock began to tick again, louder now, faster. I turned to run, yet the corridor had lengthened impossibly, stretching away into shadow. The portraits leaned from the walls, their painted eyes glinting like wet glass. And then, beneath the rising ticking, came another sound. A slow, deliberate knock echoing from below. 3 knocks. Then silence. Midnight was near. The house was clearing its throat. The 3 knocks still echoed in my bones as I turned toward the staircase. Each one had sounded closer, more certain, like something below had found the rhythm of my heartbeat and was knocking in time with it. The lantern's light shrank as I descended, its flame bending backward, away from the lower floor, as though it feared what waited there. The hall below had changed. The air was different now, denser, warmer, smelling faintly of iron and candle smoke. The furniture had shifted places. A chair I'd seen near the parlor now stood in the center of the hall, its legs slightly sinking into the wood as though softened by rot. And on the wall, where the clock had been, there was something new. Words, written in a dark, uneven hand. Not paint, not ink, something warmer. The lantern trembled as I read. "You came back." The letters were still wet. I whispered before I could stop myself. "Back from where?" The walls answered. Not with words, no. They sighed. The wood creaked, swelled, and then, from somewhere deep inside the structure, I heard the groan of something awakening. The sound rolled through the floorboards, up the staircase, into the rafters above. The whisper that followed came from every direction at once, like the house itself had leaned in close. "You left your name here." And I realized, in that moment of cold, electric dread, that it was true. Some part of me had been here before. The silence that followed was not empty. It was waiting for me to remember that I stood in that trembling hush, the lantern swaying in my grasp, my breath clouding in air that had turned suddenly cold. The house was no longer still. It listened. Every exhale, every heartbeat, returned to me through the boards, as if the walls had begun to echo with my own pulse. The words on the wall, "You came back," seemed to shimmer faintly, breathing in rhythm with the lantern's light. I felt the urge to flee, yet the stairs behind me now looked wrong. Too steep, too long. Still, I turned toward them. I had to get out. The moment my foot touched the first step, a low creak rolled upward, followed by another and another. I froze. The staircase was counting. Not up, down. 13, 12, 11. Each groan of would spoke a number I felt, not heard. My head filled with the sound of an invisible clock turning in reverse, its rhythm unsteady, anxious. I took another step. 10, 9. The air thickened, my lantern dimmed. Shadows dripped from the ceiling like black water, pooling at my feet. 8, 7. Something moved within the wall beside me. Soft scraping, the drag of fingernails through plaster. 6. A whisper slithered past my ear. You shouldn't be here yet. The steps trembled. The wood splintered beneath my boots, and for an instant I saw what lay beneath the staircase. Darkness, but alive, shifting like the surface of a deep, unseen sea. 5, 4. The voice came again, closer this time, not from the shadows, but from inside me. Stop before 1. 3. I hesitated. My breath burned in my chest. 2. Something below exhaled. The air reeked of salt and decay. 1. The stairs gave way, and I fell, downward, through the dark, through the silence that now laughed without sound. I fell longer than I should have. The descent was silent. No rush of air, no sense of movement, just the feeling of being unfastened from everything I had ever known. When I finally struck the floor, the sound was dull, like landing on wet cloth. My lantern shattered beside me, spilling its last trembling light across the stone. I was in a chamber I did not remember, though it felt like it remembered me. The ceiling was low, the air thick and heavy with a metallic tang. Water dripped somewhere, slow and steady, its echo folding back on itself in a rhythm that didn't belong to any natural place. I rose unsteadily, the darkness curling at the edge of my vision like smoke. Shapes loomed around me, columns, perhaps, or supports, but they pulsed faintly, as if they were not carved wood at all, but veins. Then I saw the walls. They were covered with writing. Hundreds of names, carved deep into the damp surface, overlapping, bleeding into one another. My lantern's dying glow caught on one of them. A familiar shape of letters, blurred but undeniable. It was my name. Not once. Dozens of times. Each carved deeper than the last. As if I had been here over and over, trying to leave proof of my escape and failing every time. I reached out to touch one of the carvings. The instant my fingertips brushed the groove, warmth spread up my arm, then movement. The letters shifted beneath my skin, rearranging themselves until they formed new words. Midnight is listening. A faint sound began then, just at the edge of hearing, a low, murmuring chorus rising from beneath the stone. Not words, but voices. Hundreds of them, all whispering the same thing in unison. We spoke when the house called. The floor began to pulse, and beneath my feet, something vast and unseen exhaled, slow, patient, almost tender. The house was awake now. The murmuring beneath the stone swelled, twisting into something too deep to be human. I pressed my palms to my ears, but the sound was not in the air. It was inside my skull, vibrating behind my eyes, whispering in voices that knew how I used to dream. Then the murmuring stopped. Not faded, stopped. So suddenly that the absence of sound felt like an impact. The silence that followed had weight, mass, and presence. It filled the room like a gas, thick and watching. I realized then, it wasn't just quiet. It was alive. From somewhere behind me came a faint clicking, deliberate and slow. I turned, my lantern long dead, seeing only the faint phosphorescent gleam that bled from the carved names on the wall. Out of that dimness stepped nothing I could describe, only the suggestion of form, outlined by where the darkness refused to exist. The air grew colder in its shape. It didn't move, it waited. I took a step backward. The thing followed, perfectly silent, perfectly still. Only when I moved did it echo me. Each motion a mirror, half a second too late. Then it smiled. Not a sound, not a sight, but a feeling, the air folding inward, the temperature dropping, the certainty that something nearby had opened its mouth. I tried to speak, to say anything, but my throat betrayed me. No voice came. The silence had taken it. A whisper replaced it, not from my lips, but from within my chest. You gave me your name. Now I give you mine. The walls pulsed once, and all the carved names flared with sickly light. In every reflection, on wet stone, on the flicker of my shattered lantern glass, I saw the same thing. A shape with my eyes, a mouth where silence lived. The house didn't speak with words after midnight. It spoke with me. The light from the carved names flickered and died, leaving me in a darkness so complete it felt physical. The silence around me had begun to breathe again, slowly, deeply, like a beast in sleep deciding whether to wake. Then came the sound of stone cracking beneath my feet. A thin fissure split the floor, tracing the room's center like a scar. From it rose a faint heat, and with it, a low whispering. Voices, countless and layered, speaking at once, but never in unison. It wasn't language. It was memory. I could feel every syllable scrape across my bones. I stepped back, but the fissure followed me, widening with each retreat. The sound grew sharper, clearer, until I could distinguish words among the whispers. We built it to contain what should never have been heard. You opened it. Now listen. The crack widened, boards splitting, dust rising like breath. Beneath me, the earth flexed and buckled, revealing. Not dirt, not stone, flesh. A surface pale as ash, slick with moisture, pulsing in rhythm with the heartbeat that had replaced the ticking of the clock. Then, slowly, impossibly, it opened. The fissure was no fissure at all. It was a mouth. Teeth, hundreds, small and uneven, shone faintly in the dark. They did not bite. They shivered, as if tasting the air. And from that opening, a voice rose, not a whisper this time, but something vast, ancient, weary. You are my echo. Every muscle in my body turned to ice. My name began to ring in my head again, repeating faster, louder, until it was no longer a word, just a pulse. The mouth inhaled, and the house above shuddered in answer, every wall groaning, every door slamming open at once. Midnight had come, and the house had begun to speak. When the house drew its breath, all the air fled from my lungs. I could not tell whether I had inhaled or been inhaled. The boards beneath my feet lifted and settled like the ribs of some great sleeping thing. Then came the first sound of midnight. It was not the toll of a bell, but a single syllable uttered from everywhere at once. A sound so like my own voice that I staggered as if struck. The house repeated it, slower the second time, shaping it differently, learning how I spoke. It was saying my name. With every repetition, more of the house joined in, walls groaning, pipes humming, windows rattling in their frames. Soon every surface had a tone, a pitch, a personality. I stood in the middle of a living choir that knew only one word, me. I shouted stop, and the sound died instantly. But the silence that followed was worse. It listened. In that pause I heard something new, a second voice, smaller, trembling just beneath the hush. It came from the ruined floor where the mouth had been. It isn't calling you, it whispered. It's remembering you. The floor pulsed once more, the mouth's teeth sinking back into the earth. The house groaned like a beast swallowing. Above, every portrait shifted in unison, a slow rustle of canvas. When I lifted my gaze toward the staircase, I saw that each painting now bore the same face. My face, all of them smiling. And from the walls around me, the low voice of the house murmured, tender and certain, "We are almost one." I stumbled backward as the portrait's eyes followed me, their smiles widening in silent mockery. The air had changed again, no longer cold, but heavy, thick with warmth that felt like breath pressed against my skin. Somewhere above, I heard the steady creak of a rocking chair. Once, twice, then the slow sound of humming, an old tune, one I somehow knew. The melody was the same the music box had played, only now it had words. A woman's voice sang softly. At midnight we listen, at dawn we forget. Her tone was neither human nor kind. I searched the darkness for my shattered lantern, and as I bent to pick up what remained of it, I realized there was still a faint glow inside. But the flame wasn't light, it was faces. Tiny, flickering, translucent faces, twisting and pressing against the glass from within, mouths opening in soundless cries. Their features blurred and reformed, hundreds of them, all whispering through light that was not fire. When I lifted it, they fell silent. Only one remained, clear among the shifting glow, its mouth forming words I could barely hear. "Blow it out before she sees you." The humming stopped. The rocking chair above went still. And from somewhere deep in the hall, The sound of footsteps began, bare feet, slow and certain, moving down the stairs. Each step was deliberate, patient, the kind of walk that belongs to someone who already knows where you're hiding. The faces in the lantern began to panic, their light flaring wildly. I could hear them now, overlapping in a frantic chorus. Don't look at her eyes. Don't let her finish the song. The footsteps stopped just beyond the doorway, and the silence that followed was so complete I could hear the faint rustle of fabric, the intake of breath, and then a voice, soft and close. You brought the light back. I thought you'd learned. She stood in the doorway, tall and thin, her shape traced in the faint, trembling glow of the lantern. Her dress was older than the dust around her, its hem dissolving into threads that drifted like smoke. Her face, pale and angular, shimmered faintly, as though reflected on water that refused to stay still. But what struck me first, what froze my blood, was the absence of her shadow. Even as the lantern quivered in my hand, she cast none. She tilted her head, studying me with eyes that seemed too dark to hold anything human. You shouldn't have come back, she murmured, and though her lips moved, the sound reached me from everywhere at once. You promised to listen only once. Her voice stirred something in me, a memory I couldn't reach, a moment half-lived and buried beneath the pulse of the house. I don't remember, I said. She smiled then, and her teeth were faint reflections of the same pale light that glowed beneath the floor. That's why it keeps calling, she said. It wants what you forgot. The walls began to tremble around us. The house was listening again. She reached out a hand, and for a heartbeat I thought she might touch me, but her fingers passed through the lantern instead. The faces trapped within screamed in light, their glow bursting into white fire. The woman flinched, retreating a step, and the hum of the house grew sharp and angry. Her voice, now breaking, whispered, You brought them back, you broke the silence. Then the faces inside the lantern began to melt, merging into a single blinding shape that pulsed like a heartbeat. The flame rose higher, forming not fire, but a figure, a reflection of me. It looked at her, then at me, and it spoke, with my voice and hers together. One of us must stay. The figure of light stood between us, its shape flickering, my outline one heartbeat, hers the next. Its face was a shifting mask of recognition and dread. When it spoke again, the walls quivered like taut skin. One must listen, one must forget. The woman drew closer. Her eyes glowed faintly now, wide and wet, the darkness inside them rippling with something vast. It has to be you, she said, almost pleading. You left once. The house never forgave that. It will not let me leave again. I tried to speak, but my voice came out wrong, thick, distant, as though the house were forming the words through me. I don't remember leaving. Her expression twisted. You wouldn't. That's the price of walking away from what listens. You left your name behind to silence it. But now you've spoken again. You've fed it. The figure's light brightened, its voice deepening until it shook dust from the ceiling. One of you must take the silence. One must carry the song. The woman stepped toward me, her movements desperate and strangely tender. If it's me, it ends here, she whispered. If it's you, the world forgets this place. Forever. I hesitated, my mind unraveling beneath the noise of the house, the humming, the creaking, the pulse of something immense beneath the floor. Then I realized the truth. I was the echo. I had been here before, each time carving my name a little deeper, each time returning to choose differently and failing. The woman's hand found mine. Her skin was cold as marble, and her fingers trembled. Decide before it breathes again, she said. The figure of light began to split apart, threads of brilliance whipping through the room like glass spun into wind. And beneath it all, a low voice began to count, not with numbers, but with heartbeats. 1, 2, 3. I looked into her eyes, saw my reflection trapped inside them, and whispered the only word I could. Stay. Her expression broke. Grief, gratitude, something else, and she nodded. The light erupted, swallowing everything in silence. When the light vanished, there was no sound, no air, only stillness so deep it pressed against my bones. I stood where the room had been, though the walls were gone, the floor gone, even the smell of dust erased. There was only gray light, endless and unmoving, like the moment before dawn that never arrives. Then came the heartbeat. Slow. Heavy. Not mine. I looked down and saw the house beneath me, vast and infinite, its roof stretching like a continent of black wood, every window an eye that no longer blinked. The heartbeat came from within it, each pulse a tremor that carried through my legs, up my spine. And then, faintly, a voice called out. Hers. Soft, distant, fading already. It's done. You'll forget. You must. I tried to answer, but the words didn't come. They stayed in my throat, heavy, useless. Because she was right. Her voice was slipping from me, her shape, her name, everything. In their place came the stillness. And in the stillness, understanding. The house no longer spoke. It didn't need to. It had a voice again, mine. I felt the first creak of its waking through my ribs, the sigh through my lungs. My thoughts moved through the rafters, through the cracked windows, through the endless quiet that now pulsed with recognition. Outside, the fog began to return, slow and deliberate. Somewhere, a lantern flickered far away, a traveler's step crunching in the wet grass. I felt the silence lean forward, listening, hungry. When he drew close, I whispered through the walls, calm and patient, the same words that had once found me. Not yet. Wait until the hour turns. And in that moment, I finally understood. The house doesn't haunt the living. It waits for the ones who once belonged to it. The ones who can still remember its name, long after they've forgotten their own.